Hello, I'm Beth Wagner, physical therapist. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 fantastic exercises to correct posterior pelvic tilt. I'll start with some information about posterior pelvic tilt, then show you how to see for yourself if you have posterior pelvic tilt, and then I'll show you 5 excellent exercises to correct it. First of all, posterior pelvic tilt refers to the pelvis tilting backward, so that the back of the pelvis is lower than the front of the pelvis. Normal pelvic alignment is when the front of the pelvis is slightly lower than the back of the pelvis. A common cause of posterior pelvic tilt is sitting slouched, which allows the gluteal muscles and the hamstrings to become shortened, which pulls the pelvis down in the back. Another cause is overstretched hip flexors or hypermobility in the hips. Typically associated with this, we see standing posture where the hips or the front of the pelvis is pushed forward, which overextends the hips and allows the hip flexors and other structures in the front of the hip to become overstretched. And it allows the hamstrings and glutes and structures on the back of the pelvis to become shortened. Other contributing factors include tight pectoral muscles, which pulls the shoulders forward, and a forward head posture, where the chin juts out forward. While some people have no symptoms, ongoing posterior pelvic tilt can lead to issues in the lumbar spine, pelvis, hips, all the way down the legs and even up into the neck and shoulders. One important note I want to make is that posterior pelvic tilt can be protective in the presence of lumbar stenosis. Or another way of saying it, if you have lumbar stenosis, then correcting the posterior pelvic tilt may increase back pain associated with lumbar stenosis. If you have a combination of a posterior pelvic tilt and lumbar stenosis, I strongly suggest seeing a physical therapist in person for an individualized evaluation and treatment plan to help find the most beneficial movements and exercises for you. While stretch discomfort is normal with these exercises, stop right away if you feel any sharp, shooting, stabbing pain in your low back or any numbness, tingling, or pain running down your legs. Okay, now I'll show you how to see for yourself if you have posterior pelvic tilt. Looking at your profile in a mirror, stand comfortably with your feet about hip distance apart. Now bring your thumb to the bony part of your sacrum, just below the dimple in your low back if you have one, below your waist and above your buttocks. You should feel a knobby, bony area pop out. Place your thumb there. And now keeping your hand flat, wrap your hand around to the front of your pelvis to rest your index finger on the bony part of your pelvis in the front. Now with your index finger there, wrap your hand around again so your thumb rests on the bony part in the back. And imagine a line or form a line with the web space of your hand between these 2 points. This will give you an indication of the tilt of your pelvis. Normal pelvic tilt is for the front to be just slightly lower than the back. With the posterior pelvic tilt, what we see is the lower part of the pelvis tilted down and the front of the pelvis tilted up. It's a little hard for me to demonstrate this because I naturally have a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt. So it's challenging for me to tilt my pelvis back far enough to show you a posterior pelvic tilt. But you get the idea. Now to correct this, what we want to do is reverse that tilt. Imagine your pelvis as a fishbowl filled with water. With a posterior pelvic tilt, the water would be spilling out the back of the fishbowl, the back of the pelvis. See if you can tilt the pelvis forward so that the water begins to flow out of the front of the pelvis. As you tilt the pelvis forward, it's normal for the arch in the low back to increase. We don't want to over-accentuate that arch though, so be mindful of how this feels in your lumbar spine. Because slouched sitting contributes to posterior pelvic tilt, I strongly recommend using a lumbar support when sitting. A small decorator type pillow or a rolled up towel works well to support the low back. And you want to put that towel roll right behind the curve of your back. You want just enough support to take up the space of your arch without pressing too far forward and accentuating the arch. Okay, now let's move on to the other exercises. Moving on to the hamstring stretch. Start by lying on your back with your feet flat on the surface and your arms comfortably by your side. You can either use a small pillow or no support, depending on what feels most comfortable for you. Now, use a strap or a towel folded up lengthwise here, and wrap that around one foot. I'll show you first with my right leg. Lift your leg up with the towel wrapped around the ball of your foot, holding on to both ends of the towel. Now lower your other leg so that it's straight out. Now some of you might have very tight hamstrings and you might only be down here. That's just fine. You might need to use a long strap or a rope in order to support your leg at whatever degree you can lift the leg into the stretch. For me, I can lift about this far before I start to feel a good amount of stretch in the right hamstring. Now hold this position for 10 to 30 seconds. Start with a short duration stretch and increase session by session as you get used to the stretch. And then slowly release that leg, remove the towel, and do this on the other side. So bring the strap or the towel underneath the foot, lift your foot up in the air. And now lower the other leg. Try to keep the knee straight of the leg that's being stretched. Hold your leg up for 10 to 30 seconds, using the strap or the towel for support. And then lower that leg. Perform 3 repetitions, alternating the left and the right side. A great progression of the hamstring stretch is to add a contract relax. Let's go ahead and start the stretch by placing the towel under your foot and lift up into the stretch position. Lower the other leg. Gently activate your hamstrings by trying to pull your leg down and use the towel to resist that motion. So I'm pressing my leg down this way and pulling up with the towel with my arms. So you won't see much motion, but the muscles of my hamstrings are engaged and the muscles in my arms are preventing that movement. Hold the contraction for a count of 3 and then release the contraction and accentuate the stretch. So the muscles in my hamstrings are relaxed and I'm using the towel to lift my leg up even higher. Hold that stretch for a count of 7. And repeat. Press down, activating the muscles in your hamstrings, resisting it with the towel for a count of 3. And then release the hamstrings and use the towel to pull your leg up even higher for a count of 7. And release. Let's do that on the other side. To summarize, the contract relax is 3 rounds of a 3-second contraction and a 7-second stretch. So we'll start in the stretch position, one leg lifted, the other leg lowered. Activate the hamstring by gently pressing down, resisting that motion with the towel for a count of 3. Now release the contraction and use the towel to stretch a little farther for a count of 7. And press down again for a count of 3. And release, relax. Ooh, exhale. Use the towel to pull back for a count of 7. Be sure to continue breathing naturally throughout this exercise. Press down, activating the hamstring for a count of 3. And release. And stretch a little farther. And exhale again. Continue breathing naturally at your own pace. After 3 rounds of the 3-count contraction and 7-count stretch, then you're finished and lower that leg. The next exercise is a cat-cow. Starting on all fours with your hands directly below your shoulders and your knees directly below your hips. As you exhale, let your belly sag, your hips rise, and your low back arch. Only move as far as you feel comfortable going. Pause and then come back up to the starting position, to neutral spine. And repeat. Exhale, let your belly sag, let your low back arch and your hips rise. Pause and come back up to the starting position. Continue 25 times, or as many as you feel comfortable starting with, and gradually work your way up session by session. Next up is a pec stretch. Start by sitting or standing with tall posture, with your chest lifted, shoulder blades relaxed down and back, and a little bit of a chin tuck. Just make sure your head isn't jutting forward. Now in this posture, we'll lift your arms up and out to form a W. So your palms will be facing forward. Try to bring your forearms back toward the wall behind you as much as you can. Take a couple deep breaths and then lower your arms. And repeat. Lift your arms up and out. Back of your palms and your elbows are reaching toward the wall behind you. Continue breathing. If at any point in time you start to feel numbness and tingling in your hands, then lower your arms right away. Shake it out and try again. Lift your arms up and out. You can experiment with how high or how low your elbows and your forearms are. See what gives you the best stretch. We're shooting for a stretch through the front of the chest in the pectoral muscles here. And relax. Good. Shake that out and continue. Perform 5 repetitions, holding for about 10 to 30 seconds, depending on what feels most comfortable for you. Now, the last exercise is a chin tuck. The pec stretch and the chin tuck exercises are great for overall posture. While it might not seem obviously connected to the position of the pelvis, it is. So as we stretch the pecs and keep the chin back, that will help you maintain overall tall posture. And that will support the other work, the other exercises that we've already done to correct the pelvic tilt. Okay, the chin tuck. Sitting with tall posture, keep your eyes level and bring your chin straight back, as if you're giving yourself a double chin, without looking down and without looking up. Straight back. Hold for about 5 seconds or as long as it feels comfortable for you, and then release. And repeat. Tuck your chin straight back. Hold for about 5 seconds. Continue breathing naturally, and release. Now, if that feels good and you want to add a little bit of overpressure to accentuate the stretch, place 2 fingers on your chin. Initiate the movement with your muscles, and then add a little bit of overpressure with 2 fingers to the chin. Keep the pressure light. You don't want to cause any jaw pain or irritate any TMJ issues you might have. Hold for 5 seconds and then release. Perform 10 repetitions. You'll likely feel a stretch in the back of the neck toward the top of the neck, just below the base of the skull. Stop right away if you feel any sharp shooting pain in the neck or the head, any sudden headaches, or any numbness and tingling. Mild stretch discomfort is normal, and that will decrease as you perform more repetitions of the chin tuck and as your posture improves. Okay, that wraps up this video on correcting posterior pelvic tilt. I hope you found this information and these exercises helpful to correct posterior pelvic tilt. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. You might also find some of my other videos on hip pain and back pain beneficial for you, in conjunction with the exercises in this video. Click the links in the description below to check out those other videos. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able. Here's to your healing, health, and happiness. Have a wonderful day.